Welcome to the Solid Signal podcast for Tuesday, April 16th, 2013. We're solidly into the second quarter of 2013 now, and it's beginning to look like the real news is all about mergers and acquisitions and all the business stuff that takes place behind the scenes in broadcasting. Who's going to buy who? Who's going to merge with who? It's all a very carefully plotted dance, and it's much harder to do than in other industries, and I'm going to explain to you why. See, if a company that makes staplers wants to buy another company that makes staplers, there's some legislative and regulatory hurdles. But you know what? At the end of the day, everybody's probably okay with it as long as there isn't some sort of major monopoly in staplers that drives the cost of staplers up to $700,000 per. But let's be honest, even if they did, probably most people wouldn't staple anything anyway, so we'd be all right with that. And you know, by broadcasting, I don't just mean radio and television. Cell phones, wireless service providers, emergency services, these are all broadcasting. Broadcasting is this big field that encompasses, when you think about it, pretty much everything that we do today. Because if we do it on the road, if it uses the mobile internet, it's broadcasting. And what doesn't? The laws that govern radio and television broadcasting in the United States actually go back to 1912. But that first law was really flawed. When you take a look at the real basis of what broadcasting law is today, you have to look back to 1934. That's right, a lot of the ideas that we have about broadcasting go back to before there was even television. Now, of course, they've been revised and updated, and every time something new comes out, then there's new laws to take care of it. But some of the essential provisions of that 1934 law are still in force, and they still apply today. It was this 1934 law that established the idea that broadcasting and the radio spectrum that allows it is actually a natural resource. That the radio and television frequencies that are used are something like the national parks. They belong to everybody. The difference is that private licenses are available for broadcasters to use this resource, but only if they serve the public trust. Serving the public trust is an important part of broadcasting legislation. That's why anytime one broadcaster wants to buy another, anytime there's some sort of new service, the government looks at it, and the number one thing they're trying to figure out is this good for you and me? If it's not good for you and me, they don't want to do it. Of course, serving the public trust isn't as easy as it sounds. Let's take a look at the big news of the week. Dish's surprise bid to buy Sprint. You could argue that Dish would do a better job of serving the public trust than SoftBank would because they're an American company, because they understand the American market better, and also for national security reasons, of course. On the other hand, you could argue that it's bad for the public for a company as large as Dish to go ahead and own both a wireless provider and a television provider. That could create some conflicts. And then you could say, well, you know, AT&T and Verizon do it. But then you say, oh, well, they're not that big. And, well, it goes back and forth. The idea of what best serves the public trust can be a kind of a slippery one. The other big thing you need to take away from that law made way back in 1934 that still applies today is the idea that the wireless spectrum is a scarce resource. In other words, the government says they have the right to regulate it because there just isn't enough to go around. Recently, some people have challenged that idea, saying that, in fact, there's virtually unlimited spectrum because you just keep going higher and higher and higher in frequencies. It wasn't possible 25, 50, 100 years ago, but today it is possible to go up to those gigahertz and terahertz frequencies. The government's not likely to rethink something that gives it almost complete power over broadcast licensing. At any rate, that takes us to the end of another Solid Signal podcast. If you have an idea for future podcasts, go to blog.solidsignal.com and click on that Suggest a Topic button. Until then, have a great week, and hopefully you learned a little something without it being too painful.